Hello and welcome back. I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching NewsX World. We come to you with more updates on the G7 summit currently taking place in Kananaskis, Alberta in Canada. We have some more updates also to bring you on the ongoing tensions between Israel and Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has made a dramatic assertion saying that assassinating Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, would end the conflict, not escalate it. Let's have a listen to that comment.
It's not going to escalate the conflict, it's going to end the conflict. We've had half a century of conflict spread by this regime that terrorizes everyone in the Middle East, has bombed the Aramco oil fields in Saudi Arabia, is spreading terrorism and subversion and sabotage everywhere. That's the forever war is what Iran wants. And they're bringing us to the brink of nuclear war. In fact, what Israel is doing is preventing this, bringing an end to this aggression. And we can only do so by standing up to the forces of evil. Look, democracies have had to learn this lesson.
Well, this comes as the Israeli military claims to have struck an Iranian F-14 fighter jet at Tehran airport. Iran, meanwhile, told the United Nations that its military actions against Israel were proportionate and purely targeted at military infrastructure, invoking the right to self-defense under the UN Charter. As the Israel-Iran conflict escalates, the world's most powerful leaders have gathered in Canada for the G7 summit, now dominated by emerging Middle Eastern tensions. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney officially welcomed G7 leaders, including US President Donald Trump, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and French President Emmanuel Macron at a ceremony in the Canadian Rockies. Behind closed doors, substantive discussions have begun, with the Israel-Iran crisis taking centre stage. Well, joining us to discuss the impact that this ongoing conflict will have on the ongoing G7 summit, as the world's most powerful leaders, most of them in Alberta, discuss what comes next. Megha Sharma, thank you ever so much for joining us, Senior Executive Editor at NewsX World. We've had reports coming through all evening, Megha, talking about escalations in the ongoing conflict, a key talking point, but US involvement and US alliance with Israel is potentially derailing a joint statement. What can you tell us?
Yes, talking about the G7 Leaders Summit that is taking place and the bilaterals that have happened on the sidelines, there have been strong statements that have been coming from the United States head of state. The US is not keen on signing the joint communique, the joint statement that at this point of time at its draft stage, where the G7 nations, excluding United States, have in their statement said that they desire immediate de-escalation from both Israel and Iran side. And the second point that has been mentioned in the draft statement says that the G7 nations unitedly condemn the nuclear program of Iran. So Trump is basically reluctant to sign this statement. Meanwhile, there's more information coming in that the British, French and the German heads of states are going to be speaking to Iran officials, the Iran president, in the course of the day today, and this is a phone call that is going to be made by these three leaders to Iran. Meanwhile, Iran has once again urged US President Donald Trump to make a phone call to the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu and tell him to ensure that there is ceasefire that takes place. In fact, the Iranian president went out to say that a single phone call from President Trump is going to stop Israel from further attacking Iran. But Israel doesn't seem to be, in a position, in a state of mind to negotiate a ceasefire, because its leaders are coming out and making statements such as these, that the killing of the supreme leader of Iran is going to ensure that the war comes to an end. In fact, the Israeli military has even gone on to say that its military operation against Iran is still not over, and they will continue to do so. There have been a number of incidents just a few minutes ago where a number of military aircraft from Israel as well as from Iran have been struck down by the military forces on either side. So in wake of all these developments that are taking place in the Middle East, as well as the appeals that are going from Iran to United States of America, it is interesting to see what happens in the joint communique that is released, the joint statement that is released by the G7 nations, that is going to be released, that is going to be put out in public domain tomorrow, and whether Trump can really be persuaded in the next few hours that the G7 nations, heads of states, have to speak with him, to discuss with him and deliberate on this grave issue that is only becoming worse as the days pass by.
Yes, absolutely. And Mega, Iran have told the UN that any cooperation by third parties, and I quote, makes them complicit in the legal responsibility and consequences of the crisis. There have been reports that the US have assisted Israel in repelling Iranian strikes. That message a warning? Will that have any impact on the discussions that the G7 leaders will be having on the crisis?
Yeah, isn't it just so obvious that this narrative that is built by the West, the G7 nations, NATO, even United Nations, the IAEA, they all seem to be on the same page in their unilateral approach of condemning Iran and stopping it from building its nuclear arsenal. Meanwhile, they have not really raised the issue of the humanitarian crisis that has been triggered because of the Israeli strikes. Like I said previously as well, there are more than 240 people that have died in the strikes that hit Iran, not just on its nuclear facilities and military infrastructure, but also residential areas, killing scores of innocent civilians. So again, a lopsided view that is being propagated in terms of the global narrative, and led by the G7. Now here, when Trump goes on and says that Iran and Israel need to have a deal in place, he goes on to say that, we had 60 days, I had given Iran 60 days to come to the negotiating table and seal the deal. There were these bilateral talks that were happening. There were these negotiations that were happening. The last one that was supposed to happen on Sunday in Oman obviously ended up as a no-show in view of the strikes that were initiated by Israel on Iranian infrastructure. And there have been a number of talks that have happened in the last 60 days as Trump mentioned this. And then this is what he has spoken as a justification for Israel to hit Iran, because Iran refused to come to a conclusion, come to a negotiation on its nuclear program. But then of course this is going to cause a major upheaval, a reset in terms of the top leadership in Iran. This is going to obviously bring about a reset in the Middle Eastern relations, whether it is Saudi Arabia or, for that matter, Turkey, which has also been raising its voice in wanting to negotiate a deal between Iran and Israel, which doesn't seem to be likely in wake of these conflicting remarks coming in, and particularly the threats that continue to be issued from Israeli leadership wanting to decimate the Iranian leadership, the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei.
Yes, Mega Sharma, thank you very much. Joining us from Alberta, where this G7 conference is taking place. We will head back over to Mega in a little while. But let's stay with this Iran-Israel conflict, which of course is a key point of discussion and thought for many of these world leaders. I bring in Adrian Calamel, a terrorism scholar who's joining us from New York to discuss further developments that we have had. Adrian, thank you for coming back on the programme to speak with us. I want to bring an update. Firstly, we showed you earlier some visuals that we had through from an Iranian TV channel where it was struck by the Israeli military. We brought you the response to that from the anchor who was on air. We've now had a response from Israel, Adrian. Not Israel, from Iran, who have issued an evacuation warning for Israeli news channels after the broadcaster, state-run, was attacked. We know the defence systems in Israel are strong, but a threat being put out there, a tit-for-tat style threat. What's the significance of that? And do you think any action will actually lead to devastation for news channels given the Iron Dome?
No, great question. I think it's capability and will. The Iranians, or the Islamic Republic, certainly has the will. They just don't have the capabilities. They will target it, possibly, but their ballistic missiles have been notoriously erratic, let's say. And we have to also look at IRIB. That is the main mouthpiece of the Ayatollah. And that is an organization that is an agency, a press agency, if they want to call them themselves. It's just a propaganda agency. It's like Pravda back in the old Soviet Union. They are deeply hated by the Iranian population, both inside and outside the country. So what you get from them, and that's another point I want to make, is you can't believe the reports coming out of the Islamic Republic, just like you can't believe the reports coming out of the Hamas Health Ministry or whatever they were calling themselves. So that's the nature of the reporting. I don't see a tit for tat here because I just don't think they have the capabilities.
Yes, Adrian, another update that we've got, Benjamin Netanyahu has been speaking, and one statement that he's made that I want to flag up to you is that he says Israel is changing the face of the Middle East. Of course, an ongoing conflict with Hamas after the catastrophic 7th of October attacks of 2023. There have also been regional instabilities in Lebanon with Hezbollah targeted, also in Yemen with the Houthis as well. Netanyahu saying he is changing and Israel is changing the face of the Middle East. Is that going to be seen as a positive everywhere, given the fact that regional instability has already been there and now the region has been plunged into even more?
I would think so. I'll always come back to the fact that the Islamic Republic is the head of the snake. They're the main state sponsor of terror. Bin Laden called the Islamic Republic his core facilitation pipeline. They sheltered the current leader of Al-Qaeda for decades until now he's back in Afghanistan. So you look at the Islamic Republic and then you look at what the Israelis have done since October 8th when Hezbollah decided to throw their lot in with Hamas. The Israelis just took a ground-up approach and degraded them, and then came off with the beeper operation, then the handheld operation, and then eventually took the head off Nasrallah, the head of the snake there. So they've kind of taken care of the tentacles on the side, and now there's Khamenei sitting on a nuclear program that he's unwilling to give up, and U.S. and Israeli interests align on this. I think Europeans do too. They're downrange now. As soon as the Islamic Republic gets a nuclear weapon, they're within range, just like India is from Pakistan.
Yes, absolutely. We do have some more updates to bring you now. An Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has just declared that Israel will coordinate with the United States to achieve its goals. We can bring you that comment from this declaration.
ואנחנו כמובן נעשה מה שצריך כדי להשיג את היעדים הללו, ואנחנו מתואמים היטב עם ארצות הברית. בבקשה.
Well, this, of course, part of comments about regional stability that have been coming through. We know the operation is set to last for some more time. Confirmation from several leading political figures within Israel that the goals have not yet been met, but that the understanding is Iran have been weakened significantly. Adrian, coming back to you, surface-to-surface missiles have been targeted, of course, nuclear facilities and military facilities, as well as personnel targeted. Benjamin Netanyahu, in recent times as well today, has talked about the assassination of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Is that the final goal for Benjamin Netanyahu in this conflict?
I don't know if that's the final goal. It's, we have to look at who's coming behind him. And behind him is his son Moshtaba. That's going to be the heir apparent. Khamenei's near death. I would think this could get to a point where, yeah, he could be the final target, but the country may just utterly collapse, and he may be flown out of the country before that even happens. That could happen. That happened with Assad, or he could go down in the ship or act like Hitler in the bunker. We don't know.
Yes, absolutely. The situation we spoke about earlier relating to the nuclear facilities, Adrian, that are still active, the ones that are underground. You said earlier that they would require bunker busters from the United States. Do you think at this G7 summit that the world leaders, aside from the US, will be talking about US avoiding direct involvement in this conflict in terms of attacking Iran, or do you think that there will be more wider support for it?
We'll try and push Trump to have some type of negotiation. Say, hey, we'll let you dismantle. We'll come in and we'll dismantle Fordo or Khamenei. We're gonna take it apart, or you're gonna take it apart, and we're gonna inspect. But he's a maximalist. He's not going to do that. So eventually, I do believe that it is going to require U.S. ordinance. It's looking more and more likely that at the coup, the final end of this is related to the nuclear file will be the U.S. involvement in taking out Fordo. When that happens, not sure. But you got to look at Natanz with the damage that they've done there, the damage they've done in Isfahan, other places. And we don't know a lot of the battle damage assessment because Israel's operating in a war. They're not going to give out operational details and battle damage assessments to the public. And anything we're getting from the Islamic Republic is going to be false or spun in a different direction. So I'm trusting from what we're hearing and what we're seeing and looking at the targets and what's being put out, and it's aligned with a very strategic operation, and the end goal is Fordo and the ballistic missiles, so the Islamic Republic can no longer fire those at Israel.
Yes, and of course this conflict is overshadowing diplomacy and geopolitics at the moment at the G7 summit, but there are other conflicts ongoing as well. Joining us now is Glenn Grant, a former advisor to the Ukraine Defence Minister, who is joining us from Riga to discuss the Russia-Ukraine war, which probably would have been more in the spotlight and taken up more discussion at this initial meeting of the G7 leaders had it not been for the tensions escalating in the Middle East. But Glenn, we know Volodymyr Zelensky is going to be present at the G7 summit further into it. How important is support for Ukraine and potential pressure on Russia from the G7 leaders at this point in time, given that peace between the two countries seems no closer than it did before the announcement of those direct talks in Istanbul?
I think the first thing is, you can go back on what I've said many, many times. I mean, there was never peace on its way in Istanbul, and there is no peace on its way at the moment between Russia and Ukraine, because Russia is still pushing forward. I mean, Zelensky's got an opportunity to talk to people again, and he needs that opportunity to keep updating people. perhaps most importantly, is to make sure that everybody, and especially Trump, understands the linkage between Iran and Russia, and that they are both on the same side, and that they've both got the same, basically the same aims of trashing the West. I think it's a bit unfortunate in many ways that America has leapt immediately with everything towards the defense of Israel, rather than actually taking a slightly more balanced view and understanding that, if they're not careful, they will unbalance the Russia war, and that will cause more problems in the long term. So Zelensky's got this task of trying to actually to ensure that balance is not lost. I think that he will get quite a bit of support from the majority of the G7. He's going to have a more difficult time with Trump, if indeed he manages to get anything out of him at all.
Yes, and Glenn, we know that Russia and Iran have an alliance and allegiance to each other. Do you think that could play into the hands of Volodymyr Zelensky, given the widespread call for de-escalation, but ultimate support in Israel's aim at stopping Iran having a nuclear weapon? Can that link and that relationship between Russia and Iran play a part in any support directly through the countries who are aligned with Israel as well?
Well, I think yes and no. I mean, I think most of the G7, if not all the G7 leaders, will understand that link. And the more recent signing of an agreement between Russia and Iran, which just shows clearly, that we're up against both of them in terms of the ongoing war. But I think what's got to come out of this is balance. And a balance of the resources. It's fine if all the leaders agree that we support Israel first, and some of them are doing behind the scenes. If they support Israel first and try and actually, clear things down with Iran and take Iran out of the picture, that would actually damage Russia considerably, because they've been taking as much support as they can from Iran and obviously North Korea. And that would take one aspect out of the ongoing Russian war, but I'm not convinced that priorities and that organisation and that logical thinking between all the G7 is there yet. Maybe it will come out after the next couple of days. Let's see. And one point on there, your previous speaker said about the communique coming out from Canada, but I heard that Canada was not going to issue a G7 communique after this round.
Glenn, I want to move now to the sort of allies in which Ukraine have had vocal support from. The coalition of the willing, led by Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron. They are both present. Friedrich Merz has been outspoken about support for Ukraine and pressure. Mark Carney hosting this meeting, a member of the coalition of the willing as well. Can there be conversations that are had on the sidelines discussing support for Ukraine that will have a benefit, and potential discussions that could look at pressure through the form of sanctions?
That's a good question, because I mean, basically the European countries in the G7 have already, put their sanctions package together collectively. I don't see that will change, because they want to do that through the EU. So the big question is Trump now going to actually to put sanctions on Russia? To be honest, I don't think he will. I mean, he's delaying his punishing Trump 2 weeks on, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks on. I think we're on the fifth 2 weeks now. So I don't see he's going to do anything there. If they do, it'll be weak and it won't hurt Russia because he's supporting Russia. I don't think the others have got the strength to actually to persuade Trump to go down a different line from supporting Russia. So and in general, other support, I mean the military support, the European countries are maxed out. I mean they can't actually provide any more because there isn't any more to be able to provide easily at the moment. I mean, maybe some more armored vehicles, maybe some more tanks. But you've seen the problem even with Leopard is that Germany's taken Leopard from Switzerland, and Switzerland won't let them be sold on to Ukraine. So we've still got problem countries who are still not supporting the Ukraine war, even in and around the European area.
Yes, I'm going to come back to you, Adrian, to look at Trump's role within this ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict. Of course, he has spoken with Vladimir Putin. Steve Witkoff has had 4 conversations directly with the Russian leader. Trump at points seems to have tried to have both sides with support. But do you think that this summit can push him in one direction towards further support for Ukraine, given the fact that so many of the vocal voices of alliance with Ukraine will be present and have the opportunity to speak to Trump one-to-one, face-to-face, and with no Russian representative present?
That's a very good question, but I just don't see it happening. Trump seems pretty set on this, and as Glenn was saying, there is a real problem with our foreign policy and the compartmentalization of looking at these issues. You got to tie Tehran to Moscow to Beijing. They all operate together, and it would appear that Trump has a belief that he can kind of, as I said in I think a previous segment, do a reverse Kissinger and peel Russia away from China. And I just don't see that as a reality. Putin wants war. That's what he wants. He doesn't want peace. I've been very disappointed with the approach. Now, Putin certainly it's going to hurt him on the battlefield now. He's going to have he ran into a firepower problem, and now it's going to become more acute because he lost the Islamic Republic. So where's he going to get those ballistic missiles from to continue, and the drones, and who helped him with all that? It was the Islamic Republic of Iran. So they're weak, and we've acted all along as though Putin was playing with a really strong hand when he had both a manpower and a firepower problem, and he had an issue with his economy. So we've taken an unfortunate path, I would say, along that conflict. Yeah.
Briefly moving away from war, I do have a quick update to bring. We have received through the news wires that Trump is set to sign a proclamation formalising this US-UK trade deal in the coming days. And the trading framework was agreed, of course, in early May. And earlier this month, Keir Starmer said that it would be tied up and hopefully come into effect in the coming weeks. Trade, of course, is set to be a key point of discussion, and we expect that to be had in the midst of these Trump tariffs. Of course, the deadline that Trump set for that 10% pause of 3 months is coming to an end on the 8th of July, and countries, including many of those at the G7, are still having conversations with the US administration. We know Shigeru Ishiba, the leader of Japan, is set to discuss trade in the face of automotive tariffs, but also those reciprocal tariffs that will come to an end at being 10% very shortly. South Korea involved in discussions as well, Canada and Mexico. Of course, Mark Carney hosting this summit, but Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum also to attend as a guest. We've heard a trilateral discussion between those North American nations will take place, and we will bring all of those updates. I just want to thank both Adrian and Glenn for discussing these updates and the impact that the G7 conference may have on them. But I do now bring you some breaking news that is coming out of Africa, and heavy weekend rains have unleashed devastating flooding and landslides in Kinshasa, claiming at least 29 lives. That in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Kinshasa, a region that has been facing difficulty with the M23 rebel movement moving through the east of the DRC, causing instability, causing a humanitarian issue and displacement as well. Local media are reporting now that this heavy rainfall leading to landslides has claimed 29 lives. That from the DRC Congo Ministry. This incident is highlighting Kinshasa's ongoing challenges with seasonal flooding in the face of conflict. Each year, the city of 15 million people experiences similar issues, influenced by urban development, deforestation, limited draining infrastructure. Experts note that climate change may contribute to more frequent and intense weather events, and the environment is something that may not be discussed much, but is something we expect to be brought up over the next period of time at the G7 summit. We will bring you more updates from that summit in Alberta, Canada, as we get it, and we will continue to bring you more updates on the ongoing Israel-Iran tensions. We'll be back very soon.
I'm Megha Sharma and I'm in these gorgeous locales of Cananasis. Cananasis is the location where the G7 Leaders Summit is taking place between June 15th and June 17th. The global heads of the biggest economies of the world are going to descend in this place, including the United States President Donald Trump, the French President Emmanuel Macron, and the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. It is a summit that is going to be overshadowed by the Israeli